The evening lights of New York City painted the skyline in gold and silver. Cars moved slowly through the crowded streets, their headlights glowing like fireflies against the darkening sky. At the corner of 58th Street stood La Vrita, one of the most elegant restaurants in the city, a place where people came not just to eat, but to be seen. Inside, the smell of fresh bread, roasted herbs, and fine coffee filled the air. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, and the soft sound of a piano made the whole room feel like a quiet dream. At a corner table near the tall windows sat Ethan Voss, a man in his early 30s. He was tall, calm, and dressed simply in a dark suit. Most people in the city knew his name. He had started a small software company that grew faster than anyone expected. And now he was one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Yet tonight, he was not here to talk about business. Tonight, he wanted to relax and enjoy dinner with his new girlfriend, Camilla Dane. Camilla was beautiful. Everyone in the restaurant noticed when she walked in. She wore a bright red dress, diamond earrings, and a smile that looked practiced. She came from a family of high society people who loved parties, fashion, and gossip magazines. Camilla loved attention. She was used to being admired, and being seen with Ethan made her feel even more powerful. They were joined by two of Ethan's business friends and their partners. The group laughed, ordered drinks, and chatted about travel, new restaurants, and luxury cars. It was the kind of table that made the waiters nervous, rich people who expected perfection. A few minutes later, their waitress arrived. She was a young black woman, perhaps in her late 20s, with warm brown skin and a calm, kind face. Her name tag read Amara. She greeted them with a gentle smile. "Good evening," she said softly. "Welcome to La Vrita. My name is Amara, and I'll be serving you tonight." Her voice had a soft rhythm, the sound of someone who had learned English later in life. Her accent carried traces of West Africa, musical and clear. She spoke politely, with the careful tone of someone who truly cared about her work. But before she could finish her introduction, Camilla gave a small laugh. "Oh, that accent," she said loudly, glancing at the others. "Where are you from again? It sounds like a song. I can hardly understand it." The people at the table grew quiet. Ethan looked at her, his brow tightening slightly. But he didn't say anything. Amara smiled politely and answered, "I'm from Ghana, ma'am. I've been in New York for 7 years." Camilla tilted her head and smirked. 7 years? Still sounds like you just got off the plane. Her friends laughed nervously. One of them changed the subject, asking about the wine list, but the moment hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Amara, still smiling, nodded and took their orders without a trace of anger. "Of course, ma'am. I'll be right back with your drinks." She walked away with graceful steps, her posture straight, her face calm, but inside, her heart beat faster. She had been through worse in her life, yet every time someone mocked her accent, it hurt a little. That accent carried her history, her family, her story, things no one at that table would ever understand. When she returned with the drinks, she placed each glass carefully in front of the guests. Ethan thanked her quietly, his tone respectful, but Camilla wasn't finished. "Careful with the glasses, darling," Camilla said in a playful but cutting voice. "These cost more than your week's salary." Amara blinked, holding back her words. She forced a smile. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll make sure they're safe." Then she stepped back and disappeared toward the kitchen. Ethan's friend, Mark, leaned closer to Camilla. "You know," he whispered, "you were kind of hard on her." Camilla laughed. "Please, it's just a joke. People need to learn to take humor, honestly. I don't know why Ethan insists on these fancy places that hire such interesting staff." Ethan said nothing. His face stayed calm, but his eyes had lost their usual warmth. He glanced toward the kitchen where Amara had gone, then turned back to Camilla. "Maybe," he said quietly, "it's the people who need to learn kindness." Camilla didn't respond. She took a sip of her wine and changed the topic, talking about an upcoming fashion event. The conversation shifted back to parties and travel, and soon the group was laughing again. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. In the kitchen, Amara leaned against the counter for a moment, breathing slowly. Another waitress, her friend Rosa, noticed her expression. "You okay?" Rosa asked softly. Amara nodded. "Yes." "Some customers think mocking people makes them special, but I know who I am. That's the spirit," Rosa said, smiling. "Don't let them get to you." Amara smiled back, steadied herself, and returned to the dining room. She moved gracefully from table to table, her steps light, her manners perfect. She treated everyone with the same quiet dignity, even the people who didn't deserve it. When she approached Ethan's table again, she noticed that he was watching her, not in the uncomfortable way some men did, but with thoughtful eyes, as if trying to understand something. When she refilled his glass, he said softly, "Thank you, Amara." She nodded politely, then turned to go, not realizing that he had used her name with real respect. Dinner continued, and the mood at the table grew louder. Camilla told more jokes, each one a little sharper than the last. She loved being the center of attention, and the laughter of others made her feel powerful. But deep down, Ethan could see something he hadn't noticed before, a kind of pride that left no room for kindness. When dessert arrived, Amara placed a small chocolate cake in front of Camilla. "Enjoy, ma'am," she said warmly. Camilla smiled in a false sweet way. "Thank you, Amora. Did I say that right? It's Amara," she corrected gently. Close enough," Camilla said. Laughing, Ethan's hands tightened slightly on his fork. He wanted to speak, but he held back. There were too many people around, and he hated public scenes. Still, something in his chest felt wrong. He had spent years building a company where everyone was treated fairly, no matter their background. Watching someone he cared about treat another person so poorly made him question everything. Amara cleared the plates quietly when they finished. As she walked away for the last time that evening, Ethan called after her. "Amara," he said softly, "thank you for the service tonight." She turned, a little surprised. "You're welcome, sir. Have a good night." Her smile, tired but genuine, stayed with him long after she disappeared behind the kitchen doors. After dinner, the group moved toward the exit. Camilla held Ethan's arm, still chatting about their plans for the weekend. Outside, the cool night air felt fresh after the warmth of the restaurant. As they waited for the valet to bring their car, Camilla laughed again about the evening. "I mean, did you hear her say espresso?" she said, trying to copy Amara's accent. "So cute." Ethan looked at her quietly. "Camilla," he said after a pause, "that wasn't cute. It was unkind." She blinked, surprised by his tone. "Oh, come on, Ethan. Don't be so serious." "It was just a joke." It didn't sound like a joke to her, he replied calmly. Camilla frowned, sensing his disapproval. "You're defending her. She's just a waitress." Ethan's eyes grew colder. "No one is just anything. Everyone deserves respect." For the first time, Camilla realized he wasn't laughing. She opened her mouth to reply, but the car pulled up. He held the door open for her without saying another word. The ride home was silent. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his apartment, looking out at the city lights. He thought about Amara's calmness, the way she carried herself even when someone treated her badly. He thought about her voice, her patience, her quiet strength. There was something in her that reminded him of a better version of himself, the kind of person he wanted to be. Camilla, meanwhile, scrolled through her phone, posting photos from the dinner with smiling captions. She didn't notice that Ethan wasn't beside her in bed. When he finally came to bed, she looked up. "You're acting strange," she said. "Maybe," he answered softly. "I just saw something tonight that made me think. About what? About people, and what really matters." Camilla rolled her eyes. "Please don't tell me you're getting emotional about a waitress." Ethan didn't answer. He turned off the light. The next morning, Ethan woke early. Camilla was still asleep, surrounded by designer pillows. He got dressed quietly and left the apartment. He had something he needed to do. He arrived at La Verita before it opened. The staff were preparing for the day, wiping tables and setting up chairs. When Amara saw him, she froze in surprise. "Mr. Voss," she said, unsure why he was there. Please, call me Ethan. He replied gently. I wanted to apologize for what happened last night. You didn't deserve that. Amara smiled politely. Thank you, sir. But it's all right. I've learned not to let people's words change who I am. I admire that, he said honestly. You handled it with more grace than most people I know. She looked at him, curious. There was no arrogance in his voice, only sincerity. That means a lot. She said, Thank you. They spoke for a few minutes about her work, her studies, her dreams. He learned that she was not only a waitress but also finishing her doctorate in linguistics, researching how people connect through language. She worked nights to pay for her studies. The more he listened, the more respect he felt for her strength and humility. When he left the restaurant, he knew something had changed in him. The night before had opened his eyes. The person who had made him proud wasn't the G. The next evening came with a soft golden sunset spreading across the tall buildings of New York. The streets buzzed with weekend excitement, couples walking hand in hand, taxis honking, laughter spilling from restaurants. Inside La Verita, the same restaurant where the hurtful incident happened, something special was being prepared. The lights were dimmer, candles were set on every table, and the air smelled of roses and vanilla. The staff moved quickly, setting up the private terrace. They were told that Mr. Ethan Voss had booked it for an important evening. Amara arrived earlier than usual, expecting another long shift. She didn't know Ethan would be there again. She had spent her morning at the university library, working on her research paper, and had come straight to work. When she entered, Rosa, her friend, whispered, Guess who's back? The billionaire from last night. The one whose girlfriend was so rude. Amara smiled faintly. Maybe tonight will be easier. Rosa shrugged. Who knows? But the whole place is talking about him. He booked the terrace again. Must be something big. Amara didn't think much of it. She tied her apron, straightened her shirt, and started helping with table arrangements. But a part of her wondered, why would Ethan come back to the same place, where his girlfriend had embarrassed someone? Maybe he wanted to make things right. At 7 o'clock sharp, the guests started to arrive. The staff greeted them with practiced smiles, leading them to the terrace. The view from there was stunning, a perfect picture of the glowing skyline and the calm evening sky. A gentle breeze moved through the candles, making the flames dance. Amara was not assigned to the terrace that night, but halfway through setting up another section, the manager approached her. Amara, he said, Mr. Voss requested that you personally assist his table tonight. She blinked in surprise. Me? Are you sure? The manager nodded. Yes, he asked for you by name. I think he was very impressed by your professionalism yesterday. Amara hesitated for a second, remembering how uncomfortable last night had been. But then she smiled and nodded. All right, I'll do it. When she walked out to the terrace with a tray of water and menus, she noticed Ethan already standing there, talking to a few staff members. He looked different tonight, relaxed, confident, and peaceful. The moment his eyes met hers, he smiled kindly. Amara, he said, thank you for agreeing to serve tonight, of course. Mr. Voss, she replied politely, please. Call me Ethan, he said with a gentle tone. She smiled. Then only if you call me Amara. He laughed softly. Deal. Before she could say more, a familiar voice echoed from the entrance. Ethan, you didn't tell me it was this fancy. Camille arrived, dressed in a sparkling silver gown. Her makeup was flawless, her heels clicked sharply on the floor, and she carried the confidence of someone who expected the night to revolve around her. She saw Amara standing beside Ethan and froze for a moment. Oh, she said, forcing a smile. You again? Amara greeted her politely. Good evening, ma'am. It's nice to see you again. Camilla gave a small laugh. Well, at least you remember how to speak properly this time. Ethan's expression turned firm. Camilla, he said quietly. Enough. She frowned, not understanding why his tone had changed. I was just kidding, she said quickly. But Ethan didn't respond. He gestured toward the table. Let's sit down. Dinner began slowly. Camilla kept talking about her day, her shopping, her followers, the people she had met at a fashion event. Ethan listened politely but didn't say much. He seemed distracted, looking around as if waiting for someone else. Finally, when the appetizers arrived, he turned to Camilla and said, "There's someone I'd like you to meet tonight." Camilla smiled eagerly. "Oh, another business partner? A celebrity friend?" "Not exactly," he said softly. "Someone more important than that." Before Camilla could ask what he meant, the doors to the terrace opened again. A few guests walked in, familiar faces from the business world, some media figures, and friends of Ethan. They were surprised to see the restaurant closed for a private event. "Ethan," one of them said, "what's this all about? A celebration?" Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said with a calm smile. "A celebration, but not the kind you think." Camilla's curiosity grew. She adjusted her dress and looked around. "You planned a party and didn't even tell me? I thought tonight was just us." Ethan looked at her kindly but firmly. "It is about us, but it's also about truth." The crowd gathered as the music softened. Amara stood quietly by the side, unsure if she should stay or go. Ethan noticed her hesitation and said, "Please, Amara, come here." Camilla's face froze. "What?" she whispered. Ethan turned toward the guests. "Everyone," he began, his voice calm but strong. "I want to introduce someone very special to me. Someone who means more to me than any title, any company, or any amount of money." He paused for a moment and looked toward Amara. "This is Dr. Amara Voss, my wife." The room went silent. The sound of the city below faded into nothing. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering for a moment. Camilla blinked, certain she had misheard. "Your wife?" she said in disbelief. Amara looked surprised too. She hadn't expected him to reveal it like this. She had wanted to tell the world someday, but she hadn't known when. Ethan nodded. "Yes, my wife. The woman you saw working here last night. The woman you mocked for her accent." A quiet murmur moved through the guests. Some looked embarrassed, others impressed. Cameras clicked softly as reporters whispered to each other. Camilla took a step back. "I don't understand. You said you were single." "I said I was private," Ethan replied calmly, "and I never felt the need to share my personal life with people who judge others by appearances." Amara's heart beat fast. She didn't enjoy scenes or public drama, but she could see that Ethan was calm, not angry, just honest. She stepped closer, her expression kind. "Camilla," she said softly, "I don't hold anger toward you. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we say things without realizing how they sound. But I hope tonight helps you see that a person's voice or accent doesn't define their worth." Camilla's eyes filled with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to. It's all right," Amara said gently. "Kindness is something we learn every day." The room stayed silent. No one moved. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the city wind outside. After a few seconds, Ethan reached for Amara's hand and held it proudly. "I met Amara 5 years ago," he said, looking round the terrace. "Back then, I was trying to start a language education program in Africa. She was one of the lead researchers. Her passion, her wisdom, and her compassion changed my entire perspective on life. She helped me see the world differently, to understand people, not judge them." Amara smiled softly. "We built this life together," she added. "And even though I still love teaching, I work here part-time because I enjoy being around people. I like reminding myself of simple beginnings. It keeps me grounded." Several people in the crowd smiled, clearly moved. One woman whispered, "That's beautiful." Ethan nodded. "Amara doesn't need to prove herself to anyone. She has a PhD, runs schools that teach thousands of children how to speak English around the world, and still finds time to serve others, literally and figuratively. That's the kind of strength I admire." Camilla looked down at her plate, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Her earlier pride had faded into quiet shame. As the evening went on, the tension in the air melted into admiration. The guests congratulated Ethan and Amara, asking questions and offering kind words. Even the staff watched with awe. No one had imagined the polite waitress was the billionaire's wife. Camilla, still sitting at the table, finally stood up. "Amara," she said quietly, I'm sorry for what I said last night. I was foolish. I judged you without knowing who you are. Amara smiled gently. Thank you for saying that. But remember, you don't need to know someone's background to treat them with respect. We're all equal in worth. Camilla nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She excused herself and left quietly, her silver gown shimmering as she disappeared through the door. For once, she didn't care who was watching. Later, as the evening ended, Ethan and Amara stood by the terrace railing. The city lights below looked like a sea of stars. The wind brushed softly against them. I didn't expect you to tell everyone like that, Amara said, smiling. You really surprised me. Ethan laughed gently. I couldn't keep it quiet anymore. You deserve to be recognized for who you are, not just by me, but by the world. She looked at him with warmth. But why here? Why this restaurant? He smiled. Because this is where I saw your strength the clearest. Even when someone tried to tear you down, you stayed kind. I wanted people to see that too. Amara blushed, her eyes soft. You didn't need to prove anything. I wasn't proving, Ethan said. I was reminding everyone, including myself, what real class looks like. As the night grew quieter, some guests left while others stayed to congratulate the couple. The restaurant manager approached, still stunned. Dr. Voss, he said respectfully, we had no idea. Amara laughed. It's all right. I like blending in sometimes. The staff smiled, and even Rosa gave a small cheer from the back. That's our Amara, she whispered proudly. Ethan turned to Amara. You've changed more lives than you realize. She shook her head. I just do what my parents taught me. Treat everyone kindly, no matter who they are. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. That's why I fell in love with you. They stood there quietly, holding hands as the